Good evening, good evening. Hey, everybody. So, good evening, good evening. Let me now ask whether everything was silent or did you get my intro sound at all? Just a question, because it seems like after a couple of days, I've gotten a bit rusty on this one. Hey, Desiree, I'm thankful for you too. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, so can you not hear me on the mic either? I wonder why. Okay, you can hear me. Okay. So there was a little bit of sound on the intro. Okay, fantastic. Hi, Anita. Okay, awesome. So the intro, everybody is saying, has had no sound at all. Okay, that's a shame because I turned the volume down of the intro because it is pretty heavy. So what I'm going to do just to test this out, because I'm sorry, when I was doing my test phase before going live, everything seems to be okay. But then suddenly when you're doing it with people, everything just goes belly up. So just 1 second. Let me see, if you don't mind, just to give that one more go and see if now you hear sound. Okay. Well, that's a shame. We're going to skip that, and I am then going to figure out what went wrong there. I'm not going to waste your time. Sorry about that. I posted this on the Instagram. Maybe if you want to go head over there, you can hear the sound. I'm not going to waste your time. We've got some things that I wanted to talk to you today, but again, as you can see on the ticker below, that it is not about me. I'm just here to, let's say, entertain for a little while, and it is more about you and hearing your voices. And I hope that we don't get too much dog barking. There's a lot of activity in the background, and they are a little bit restless tonight. So what I have in store today, just to see if anybody is interested, let me pull up a window, because the last time we went to Africa to find new orchid species, and I thought, let's go to the other side of the world and let's go to Australia, because Australia, thank you, Michael. Yeah, as you come in, hit the like. I appreciate that a lot. We will be going to Australia today because in the Western Australian bush just outside Bremer Bay in the state south grows a rare orchid that botanists, spotters, and photographers travel from all around the world to see. And you can see that little image down there, and boy, is she gorgeous. And she is called the Queen of Sheba, adorned with stunning shades of purple, blue, and yellow. Thelmitra variegata, commonly called the Queen of Sheba orchid, is one of the rarest plants on earth. And I thought I would highlight this because, I mean, there's a lot of plants in the world, but it's an orchid. And I just thought, well, and she is right up my alley. Look at those colors. I just think they are amazing. It grows only in the wild for the most part in southern parts of Western Australia. It's one of the state's most protected species and can take between 7 and 10 years to flower. Here we are again, patience. So this month, whenever this was written, I believe, I don't even remember the date. Here we are, June of 2022. This month, staff at Toza's Bush Camp, northwest of Bremer Bay, spotted their first Queen of Sheba for the year. I know. And Julie's Orchids sent me this fabulous book. It's quite stunning, to be honest with you. And they welcomed this sighting with, hello girls, to see you again one day earlier than last year. So I guess Tozier's Camp is the place to go if you are going to be venturing out, trying to find this rarity and look at it in person. So the Queen of Sheba apparently is a very interesting orchid. Even amongst orchids, it's pretty remarkable. There are 4 or 5 different variants of it in the different parts of Western Australia, but the actual Queen of Sheba is extremely limited in range and now extremely rare. Taxonomically, it's complicated because of its lifestyle. So the sun orchid has pollinating tricks. I think that this Mr. Thiele says all of the sun orchids are deceivers. Most plants are pollinated by insects and they give a reward to the insect that pollinates it. It's a good thing for the insect to visit the flower. The sun orchids don't give the insects anything. They trick it. They look like other flowers, so the insect's thinking it's going to get a reward, picks up the orchid's pollen on its back and goes away disappointed. So he said that this was partly why the patterns and coloring of Queen of Sheba's flowers can vary so greatly from each other. It is important for them not to look all exactly the same because insects learn. If the insects get too disappointed, they're not going to visit and pollinate that flower again. So the orchids are very, very variable, and that makes it hard to figure out what the species are, exactly what they look like, and how to tell them apart. So, he understands why so many orchid hunters flock to the state to see the Queen of Sheba and other subspecies native to the state. Western Australia is a hot spot for terrestrial orchids. Now, I feel a little bit bad because this live is up and running at a time of day that our Aussie friends are fast asleep, I would think. But I thought, if they find the time to watch back, I would put this right at the beginning of the live stream so they can have a look. And I'm sure that I am actually not telling them anything new. Maybe eventually when we get to the Aussie time zone live section, we can revisit this and get some experience and insights from that end. I thought that was really, really cool. Insects learn. And then the orchid adapts, and the colors, they're not Michael McCarthy's kind of styly with all the spotting, but when I saw that, I was like, yeah, I like that. And I am so sorry. Yes, Desiree, of course, happy Thanksgiving to everybody that is celebrating Thanksgiving worldwide. I can imagine that everybody's busy, and I was umming and eyeing whether I should actually go live, what time I should go live. And then I thought, we have some Europeans as well. And then maybe while people are cooking, they need some white noise. And I thought, that's me, white noise. So yeah, anyway, I thought that was pretty interesting, but there's more to this than meets the eye. So let's go and visit Western Australia and whoa, what did I just do? Okay, I'm going to have to find that window again, never mind, and find exactly where this orchid is, just in case you might want to think of going over there. Let me find our flight path. All right, let's go. Trusted Google Earth, Western Australia, enormous. I wouldn't imagine not finding an orchid there at some point. And we're going to go down to Bremer Bay, which is right down here on the corner. Will you take me there, please? A little bit more. Thank you. Looks like a pretty nice place, huh? A bit of agriculture going on there in the bush. That reminds me of Gordon's Bay in South Africa. Table Mountain would be here, going up there, Gordon's Bay. Anyway, right, let's not get distracted. When I go to Google Earth, I go down rabbit holes. So let's find ourselves our beautiful, beautiful habitat of that orchid. And if I made my, there we go. Not too much of a failure after all. Here we are. Toza's bush camp right there. Okay, doesn't look like much, but we can go in a little bit further even, and we can see that you can literally, you know, you got your parking lots and everything like that. And there is no street sign, no street view here. I can't take you down, but you can see somewhat the terrain. It's kind of rugged, lots of hiking trails clearly. And I would say if that orchid blooms, if you know where your cluster is, I'm going to be guessing that the trees aren't that tall. It's more shrub, bush, rocks, and sandy kind of good drainage terrain. But yeah, so anybody busy, or let's just say planning anything for next year, June, around about the end of June, that's when you could find and get lucky to see that beautiful Queen of Sheba orchid. So there you go. Okie dokie. And another little thing. Hey AMC, how are you? Hey Chris Schmidt's son, how are you doing? Welcome. It's good to have you. Thank you for being here. If you're in the States, happy Thanksgiving. I must not forget that. I am so sorry. Just one moment, please. I want to clear my throat. It would appear that the season is doing its number with me and probably getting a bit of a cold. Anywho, so there we go. June travel plans are set. You're welcome. Right. Now I'm going to have to pull up. I can take that away, but I'm going to have to pull up a window again because I just X'd out the window that I need. Because, you know, for some of us here in the other part of the hemisphere, we are going into, well, our orchids, me too, if I could, going into dormancy. And there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing is with my video, I thought it was super interesting how many comments came through. And I was going to do a separate video back in the day and just go and review the comments, etc., etc. And then I thought, hey, why not do it on a live? Because let me do something right here in the chat. I don't know how many of you are familiar with how lives work, live chats, interaction, and all that stuff. I don't want to be presumptuous and think that you don't know anything or you may know more than what I believe you would, but I have the options of writing a question. And you can ask your questions if you hit the blue bar at the top, and then you can type in a question if you don't want to come up on panel. And then I will hopefully not forget and revisit the blue bar and see if there are any questions while I'm talking. So gives me a little bit, you know, my eyes a bit of a rest from the chameleon effect. And then you can type away, ask your questions, and hopefully we get the answers. All right. Now, can you see? I want to show my chat, please. Show me the chat. Can you see the two bars at the top? Two blue bars. Sorry for the dead air for that time being. Please let me know if you can see that, because if you click on the top bar, you can type in a question or a comment or anything like that, and then, you know, continue with the chat as per usual, and I will do my best to make sure that I keep my eyes up there. But for the time being, let me move this window out of the way. It's getting a little bit crowded here on my desktop. Now I know why people work with two monitors. Let me make this one bigger. And we are going to escape out of that. Let's go to this one here. Let's talk about that right there. Okay, and that is the studio side of things. Let's make that bigger and start the playing. And I'm going to skip forward because first of all, I want to run down for my brain just to make sure that I remember everything that I said.
Welcome to this video where I'm going to walk you around dormant. Some orchids will hold on to their leaves much longer depending.
Yeah, okay, so I'm just going to skip all that intro and then we're just going to revisit the actual content.
Ones and how to go about
observing
what is going on and the treatment we have to give these orchids so that we don't make a mess of things and hopefully get the blooms come spring. Now, my Dendrobium polyanthum looks fabulous, beautiful and green and lush. Oh, but don't be fooled. Some of the canes at
double checking if you can hear the sound on the replay video. Like, give me a 1 in the chat if you can hear the sound or something, just to make sure that the same mistake doesn't happen with my intro. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Their bases are losing their leaves. So, a little bit of a dig, and there we have yellowing leaves. This orchid is heading into her dormant or resting mode. I will use the phrases interchangeably because pretty much as far as that's when I stop fertilizing.
Okay. Let me just look at this. We've got to stop fertilizing, supplementing, reduce water, da-di-da. Yeah, low humidity, very important. We must not deny them any water depending on blah, blah, blah. I'm still happy with that.
Because you can stop fertilizing very, very radically. The metabolism of the orchids is such that by the time they go into dormancy, their whole process of heading into dormancy started about 4 to 6 weeks ago because that is the way hormones.
All right, I want to elaborate on this point a little bit more. I've always been meaning to do an orchid lingo video about hormones. The hormones that we see with our orchids and what we see, whatever happened to trigger a new growth, to trigger a new root, or even to trigger dormancy, when we see it with our eyes, the hormones have already activated this happening, this activity, 4 to 6, maybe 8 weeks in advance, and then it only coincides with our, let's say, for example, temperature drop. However, the fact that in certain instances the day lengths are getting shorter is what triggers an orchid, so to speak, to start mobilizing hormones. So not necessarily the cooler temperatures is what happens. It's by that time everything's already up and running and the orchid is heading into dormancy. It happens so much sooner. So in a way, when we do say stop watering according to your humidity or apply some water based on, how much humidity you have, all that fundamental stuff, by the time we see it happening, just think of our habits of what we are doing leading up to what we see happening. Because if we see green foliage and active root tips, we're still watering and fertilizing. However, the activity of going into dormancy has already begun and we haven't seen it yet. So when we talk about as well going, reducing fertilizer gradually, I am of the opinion that reducing fertilizer gradually makes absolutely no difference. You can, in actual fact, stop fertilizing straight away if your orchid isn't still showing active signs of root growth, because one thing is the orchid is heading into dormancy via the foliage, but there's still some root tips. So we want to promote that root growth for as long as possible. And by that time, yes, we can reduce the fertilizer gradually. However, if we don't have any signs of active growth, there is no need to reduce fertilizer gradually because we've been fertilizing all up to the point where we could actually recognize dormancy is kicking in. I would like to know if what I just said makes sense. It is something I've been wanting to elaborate on for a long, long time. But you know how videos can be on YouTube? It's just how to fit them all in. And if I ever get around to doing an orchid lingo about hormones, that is the information that I wanted to put into that video, amongst other things. But as we are talking about dormancy, this whole thing and the confusion about reducing fertilizer and when not to, basically is don't bother about reducing. You can cut the fertilizer straight away. Just administer the water, depending on your humidity levels, unless you've got growing root tips, and then just gradually peter out and promote a little bit of root growth. Let me know in the comments if that makes any sense whatsoever. And if you hear dead air, it's because I'm waiting for you to reply, and I have about a 10 to 11 second delay, like a lag tonight. And I will look and see if there's been any questions. Okay, we'll continue. This may be a little bit staggered because, yeah.
Work. And in conjunction with temperature drops. So if I had been fertilizing up to now, I can radically drop the fertilizer. I don't have to peter it down slowly, because everything that this orchid had leading up to now is now...
Ha! I'm repeating myself. You see? I actually mentioned it here. Maybe not as elaborated, but briefly.
Stored in the canes. She is not going to be absorbing anything else. And eventually we'll just have bare canes to look at, which is a reoccurring theme in this video. On the other hand, my Bensonier is already very, very far ahead. It's very obvious to see that the leaves are yellowing at the tips, and it seems to be happening radically.
And since this video has aired, the Bensonia is about to drop her leaves. I mean, talk about fast.
Not all at once, but the leaves are not starting from the base, moving forward like the polyanthum. Instead, it's probably going to happen about 2 or 3 days. One day I'll wake up and they're on the floor, or I can...
And that day has happened. They're not on the floor yet, but it's also important to understand, if you do have a deciduous dendrobium or a deciduous, well, are there other deciduous orchids out there? You could say Ancelia africana is somewhat deciduous, but not really. But anyway, it makes no difference where the leaves start to drop. There's nothing wrong with your orchid. There are some that drop them all at once, and some start at the base like the polyanthum, and some, just like the phyllum, they just go yellow whenever. And I've been trying to remove some leaves on a daily basis, but it's all sporadic and random.
Can just lightly remove them from the canes. No strong tugging. If you want to groom your deciduous orchids, make sure you just give them a light rub and see what falls off willingly into your hand. Do not pull. You don't know if that's going to cause some damage and allow some pathogens to enter in, and we don't want that. Tips to me says she is starting to go into resting phase, but is still absorbing nutrients via her roots. They would not be active, as we will see in other examples of orchids going dormant, where the root tips will close.
My Neophanetia has now gone pretty much completely dull, lackluster, etc. So we've got all the pointers here. We've got the yellowing root, the dump, that matches, keep watering at normal. Okay, that matches.
So there I am reducing fertilizer levels, not the radical stop as with the polyanthum, because she still is in active growth. When I see root tips...
Okay, we covered that.
Which is a classic example of an orchid that has still got lush green canes.
Yeah.
However, we have leaves which are showing clear signs of going into dormancy because they are going yellow.
That is right here. Okay, I didn't put an arrow in this video, my bad. The canes down here. Some of your orchids going into dormancy will have canes from 2 years ago or the previous year. They don't lose their leaves, as in this case with the tortille, of the canes that were grown in the actual year growing season. So this is sometimes where confusion kicks in, that my canes are not going, or my orchid is not going dormant because I've still got leaves on my canes. And especially in nobile types as well, you won't be losing the leaves on the actual canes that you grew in that growing season. So it's a matter of knowing which orchid you have. And usually the best way to figure things out with an orchid is when you have a species as to how they behave. You get a complex hybrid, it can go all a bit wishy-washy, but there's usually a sign that will show you that your orchid is going into dormancy. If no leaves fall, your roots will stop growing.
Oh, but those are canes from 2 years ago.
Okay, we covered that. Okay, we covered that. Here we go. What's this? First sign of yellowing leaves, active root growth, stop fertilizing, da-di-da, but no, have humidity levels depending, always keep an eye on your humidity levels. If you've got high humidity, they will work. The roots will absorb from the air, and you may not need to mist as much as someone like me with low humidity, and I am misting every single day. It isn't a drenching, it isn't a watering, it is going around with the spray can that I have, pretty much like the butler in Miss Sophie's 90th birthday. He just chucks in the drink into the glass. That's it, a splash, no more.
New canes, but I'm seeing it on the canes that were grown in 2021.
Okay.
No, the regular commercial ones.
Okay.
And in the front, I have a Dendrobium nobile species. The behavior should.
Okay, let's move forward. All right, I've discussed that briefly. My Cooksonianum, thank you very much, Fernando, for that orchid. She has still not dropped any leaves, whereas my nobile here is pretty much bare on the canes from last year. So now I only have foliage. This is a complex hybrid. This is a species. It would appear that this species is holding on to the leaves much, much longer. I love it.
Tubby and as fat as they can be has passed. They are literally starved.
Okay, we covered all that.
See that, does that.
Hello, Baloo. Little photobomb there.
When it is a self-watering setup, meaning that my root systems are accustomed to being wet. That means the Balloon is not used to a wet-dry cycle.
Sorry about Baloo. Excuse me. Let me fast forward that.
Whether I'm going to
the animals.
But I do not want my microfibers to ever dry out.
Okay, that's personal. That's all personal. In a wet-dry cycle.
Now it's
in a wet-dry cycle, of course, as I mentioned in the video, just give it a mist. They still need some access to water. Do not starve them of water. Do not dehydrate them to the point that you see your cane shriveling. Some people say, when you see your cane shriveling, then you can, give them a little bit of water, and just to stop the shriveling process, and then the canes will plump up again. That little bit of information says quite a lot in my mind. Why would you want your orchid to start to shrivel in order for it to then plump up? It makes no difference when it comes to the blooming. In my opinion, putting an orchid through a shriveling phase, by the time you then see it to the point of adding some water so that it plumps up again, that's a stress factor, in my opinion. There is no need for that to happen to give you an idea that your orchid needs water. And you can see that the fact that the cane will plump up again, the roots are functioning. So we should work with the orchid and give her enough so we never get to the point of, oh, my bulbs are shriveling, like in the case of Catasetinae, for example. Some will start to shrivel and then, oh, let's put some water. That is if you haven't chopped the entire root system off when it came to repotting, and then you're going to pot it up in fresh sphagnum moss again. So this whole thing about letting it shrivel, and if it does, then add some water. I wouldn't want to do that to my orchids. If I can very, very targeted, give some water. It just doesn't have to happen, in my opinion.
Showing nubbins,
and if you have any contradictions with anything I'm saying at any point in time, let me know. I'm trying to follow the chat at the same time, and we can talk about it, okay? because, you know, some people say, well, they need this because it makes them stronger. I don't know what the reasoning is because I don't follow that. I don't want my canes to shrivel at any time.
Heading into even colder temperatures, what needs to happen if that happens is to make sure to observe the progress of the nubbins, because they...
Okay, the nubbin progress is something fascinating, and this is where I want to stop because I'm going to skip ahead so we can get to the comments and see the opinions and whatever people had asked. Now, the nubbin stage on the Noble Leader I find extremely premature, way too soon in the season. My Noble normally blooms in February, March, round about there. If I'm lucky, it'll hold on through April, May. But I've got nubbins now, and yes, they are progressing. So I am very loath to add any amount of fertilizer that I would normally put in springtime, because that's easy. It's go time. The temperatures are just going to warm up, you know, gradually. I have had a super mild November, even though my bones are telling me differently, but my orchids are outside for the last, well, this will be the third night, because I've had 57 degrees Fahrenheit, but 15 degrees Celsius outside overnight, and that'll go until Saturday is when I have to bring the gaggle back in. So this is unheard of at this time of year for me. Usually by mid-November, they're all hunkered down and I'm doing the whole orchid shuffle thing. So my nubbins are progressing, and it's a little bit alarming for me because I'm not bringing this orchid in to have her bloom. It's a stage where I'm at right now. I'm just like going, okay, let's see what happens. However, despite the warm temperatures, my Blatia hasn't moved at all.
I am thinking, okay, time to fertilize again because, you know, woohoo, blooms. But if the temperatures were mild leading up to a certain point and the orchid is interpreting that as spring, it's going to start showing nubbins. Now, when the temperatures drop considerably again and I'm fertilizing it, I now have to back off on even adding fertilizer, which I would normally do if I were in late winter, early spring, and this would be happening. I would start with fertilizer immediately, being that it is...
And yes, next week the temperatures are going to drop down to about 50, something like that. So this still applies. Now let's just move forward a teeny tiny bit and see if we can't find the part she's still talking about, the Nobiles. See if we can't find the part of the Blatias. She's gone dull. She's totally lackluster. We know that now. That's a sign of heading into dormancy. And here, this is what I mean about giving our orchids a misting or whatever. This was real time, 5 seconds, no more. Boom, that's it. It's just a little touch of a little something, something. And if the days are super cold and dull and somewhat, you know, foggy and nasty and the humidity is high, I don't even mist at all. But can we just take a moment and appreciate this beautiful trash basket right here? That Ancelia root system. By the way, side note, I know, tangent. Okay, Ancelia africana with a little affinity here of doing this. I read somewhere that, because not all of mine are doing it to this degree, I read somewhere that Ancelia africanas that do not have enough access to nitrogen will start forming a basket for them to then collect debris and get their nutrients out of the debris collected in those roots. And I found that super interesting. And I'm going to try and work on that next year and see what happens. Meanwhile, I find it an absolute stunning sight. But if this is a sign that this one wants more nitrogen, she's going to get it in 2023. My other ones aren't as radical, so they're not as big and mature. So maybe this is a hungry Ancelia. We shall see. Anyway, side note, moving on. Sorry about that.
And if I see the reservoir filling up, that means I'm misting too much. And
yeah, that's a good measure for self-watering. Now, moving on. Where is mine? There we go. There we go.
Insane.
Okay, this was the growth, the status of the growth after I peeled away the gravel. And with that, I found new growths on my Blatia. Shocker, stunner. Wow, that took me by surprise. But when I repotted them and I thought, yeah, well, we're going to have some warm days, I'm going to watch the progress, they have not progressed beyond the surface of the gravel well. I have covered them up with the repot, and even though we've had this warmer stint coming in now, they have not progressed, and I find that super interesting as well. Meanwhile, they've got water in their reservoir, and we shall see what happens next.
This orchid is showing me all the signs it's going into dormancy, it's losing its leaves very quickly, and it should be going to sleep and then let the weather conditions take care of it as and how the weather is. In my case, growing it in a pot, it's outdoors all year round. I don't add any water unless, for example, we have an entire stint of 6 to 8 weeks of absolutely no rain, and then I make sure that my media isn't exactly saturated.
Okay, still applies. Where are we going with this video? How far?
Not if
okay, there we go.
Even though some at the bottom haven't even begun yet. There is no...
the change is pretty drastic. The change is completely different. I've been sweeping away on the daily. Meanwhile, I was wondering why my Incelias has very little of those roots. Yeah, we're probably giving it a lot of nitrogen. Now, the ones that we share, the buffalo crossed with, the Joe Puffouter or something like that. The one we share, mine hasn't got a big root system, aerial root, the trash basket. It doesn't have that. The other one, my first ever, is starting with those. It's pretty big as well. So I'm looking at the difference because I have two Ancelias that are pretty much similar in size, and one is developing those roots and one isn't. I just found that super interesting. And Bettia think it's spring. They're already growing. Okay. I wish we could fast forward, Fernanda. Okay, so yeah, this orchid is my Dendrobium aphyllum. She's a very happy growing orchid. She does her magnificent show for 2 weeks, and then you're just pushing canes for the next 11 and a half months. She's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
Fertilizer for this orchid anymore either, because she also doesn't have active growth.
Right, so we got that covered, moving. Yep. Come back soon. Fantastic. Okay, so right, give it while and I will be back to share the screen again. And that, Michael, is something that I have noticed with my keikis on the aphyllum. That. Oh, I'm so envious. 86? Oh, wow. So you see, my aphyllum keikis bloomed even though they had like little to no sun, no winter rest, and they bloomed with leaves on them. So it's all a little bit of a, why are you doing that there and not here? And maybe it has something to do with temperature, but are you still giving them any fertilizer? As a question, are you still giving your aphyllum any fertilizer? Okay, that's interesting. I wonder what I would do in your situation. I haven't thought about it. Let's go to this one. No, we're taking this one. Okay. Let's take that away and let's have a look. This is a good reminder to watch orchids on an individual basis. Preach, Carol, preach, because I think that it is super important that when we come to a genus, it is so easy to fall into kind of a rhythm and a routine, and I speak for myself that everything is like this, everything is like that, it's this, that, and like a fowl, you treat them all the same, all the summer bloomers, you treat them the same, and boy, have I learned my lesson that that is not the case, especially when it comes to even the complex Phalaenopsis hybrids. So the sets of orchids, I have changed the way I work with sets of orchids. I go by foliage now. If I have dark leaves that I need to address, I group my orchids when it comes to dark leaves, when I'm cleaning or whatever and addressing them, because usually that is also a signal of where they should be located based on light levels. Same with my summer bloomers. I mean, that's pretty easy, light leaves, but the light leaves also include my Dendrobium nobilis, for example, because they have the same light color, including the tortile, and that's when I treat all orchids with light leaves, because again, they should be located where there's a high influence of light. So that's how I do it now, because I've got caught badly when I thought Cattleya hot over there. You see, coming from Kenya, let me tell you something about the culture shock I experienced when I came to Europe. I could not understand blue skies and cold. It just doesn't gel with me. It took me a long time to look out the window in October to see a beautiful blue sky and not head out there with wet hair. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And the same with orchids. It's taken me many decades. Let's just say the third collection, this collection here, because of the lockdown and everything, I've really had time to focus on it when I was buying into them and everything, to understand that, you know, just because I was living at sea level in Kenya doesn't mean that there's equator tropical orchids at the equator that aren't at high elevation. I mean, Dum here, you know, when you fall into a rut and a routine and you only see what's around you, but you don't look beyond that, I find that is my biggest enemy. So the complex Phalaenopsis hybrids, they taught me a lot, and then also all these deciduous orchids, which I didn't grow when I was in Kenya. Meanwhile, when I was at altitude in the Aberdare Mountains or in Kilimanjaro, I wasn't paying attention for orchids. Seriously, that was not the name of the game at the time. Now, of course, I'm thinking back when I was in those territories and in that kind of terrain. I just think back and remember how wet things were. Everything was dripping, even though it wasn't raining. And that gives me a good correlation as to what we're talking about. But I was up there in the mountains, you know. Anyway, I like the idea that we have to look at an orchid at an individual basis, even though we're dealing with a Cattleya alliance. I know that may be duh to some, but it was a revelation to me when I brought this orchid collection in and really started to research before buying. And still, I got, you know, I overstepped my competence, because I never considered that the humidity level cannot be compensated without just misting. I'm like, yeah, so she needs to be misted a little bit more. Yeah, so this orchid, well, whatever, self-watering will take care of it for me. No. It's, you know, one little bit puzzle, you think you've nailed it, and then there's another component, and it's like, nope, you're wrong, try again. So I was told Dendrobium orchids are pest magnets, so I'm hesitant to get them. Dendrobium orchids. Some can be, Desiree. Some can be. But the pest magnet of a Dendrobium is more a mealybug in my climate, so that's extremely dry. I don't see any, I have never had scale, mealybug, or anything on my aphyllum, whereas my tortile, yes, I've had scale for the first time this year, and mealybug as well. So in my books, I'm sort of like observing what's going on between the attraction of pests, so to speak, and foliage, to see if there's a partnership going on there, because my nobile types have the same kind of leaf texture, color, and gloss to them as does my tortilla, for example. Now, mealybugs like anything that is soft and juicy. As far as I'm concerned, that's where they like to hide out. And mealybugs are easy to take care of. So I wouldn't let that sway me at all. The scale on the tortilla this year took me by surprise. I was not expecting that, because my nobiles have never had scale. And that orchid is so compact and bushy, you know, based on the fact the way it is and where it lives, it should have had scale by now as well, but no. So don't let that put you off to be pest magnets. Any orchid, any plant for that matter, can be a pest magnet. You know, even if you're growing, let's say, organic and a house plant in soil, you've got fungus gnats to deal with. So I wouldn't let that deter you, Desiree. If you want to go for a dendrobium, especially not with mealybugs. They're a doddle. Oh, I'm reading the comment and now I'm seeing Michael. Okay. Okay. Hard-cane dendrobiums do great and bloom nicely. Hey, Anita, okay, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Southeast Texas, relatively high in humidity. Okay. Yeah, no, dendrobiums, you know, give it a go, Desiree. I mean, if you have any questions with regards to a specific one that you're sort of, you know, you're looking at and you want to have a little bit more, you know, confirmation maybe, you know, shoot me an email. Just send an email and let me know, what do you think of this one and so, you know, because nobody wants to introduce any pests. You know, I'm the same way. Today I was looking at my collection outside and just, you know, double checking and everything, and I see that my Velotina, little Cattleya seedling Velotina, it's got very wrinkled pseudobulbs, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? Because, you know, the roots are looking okay. What I can see at the surface, there is nothing going wrong, and it's got exactly the sign of scale, and I'm like, okay, right. And sure enough, I found some scale in the ridges of the pseudobulb behind a sheath that I didn't clean because the orchid has never shown me signs of scale, and boom, there they were. So I've got good roots in the pot, but the way that Velotina is looking on all her leaves, I'm like going, no, please don't do this. You know, this is not the one I expected to lose, seriously. Anyway, so informative video. Thank you, Miss Behaves. Perfect timing. I hope that Miss Behaves sees this video because it was part and parcel of why I thought I would go live. And I know it is Thanksgiving, but I hope that she does see that the live, I put the, you know, the title, I gave a little bit more specifics instead of just saying I'm roasting an older video. Because of this comment, because it's the perfect time and she wanted more advanced growers themed videos. And for that reason, when I do a live like this, I like to have the opportunity to talk about certain things in greater depth if they are of interest, and if the comments in the chat also give me that opportunity by asking specific questions where I can elaborate straight away. And don't forget, you can always come up on panel. I will drop a link into the chat and then we can discuss it one-on-one. The opportunities are endless as long as I get my sound taken care of when it comes to my intro. Oh, Robert has the fantastic luxury of growing his orchids in a controlled environment in a case. So he holds off on feed and only water those that often. Yeah. I mean, oh, there's a variety, but here, that was helpful. Okay, here we have, this was helpful. 3 orchids, Nobly Zygosymbidiums. They are now having their winter rest or winter slowdown because Friday they take it inside. Hi Diva, in case you watch this afterwards. 0, lowest 10s, better safe than sorry. Okay, so the Cymbidium as such, depending on the climate, the moment that Diva brings a Cymbidium indoors, it's going to be nice and warm. There is no real dormancy period for any Cymbidiums. They will slow down based on what they are given. If it's too cool for them, like in my case, if it does drop down, it'll start slowing down the spikes. But because it was warmer or the conditions were more favorable, it started spiking in September, as opposed to when it should normally, when I see spikes, would be around December. Totally ridiculous. And because of the warm temperatures, those spikes have been progressing at the steady pace of a Cymbidium, but a Cymbidium is not a resting orchid per se. So I wouldn't actually ever withhold any water from that orchid. And now if Diva brings the orchid inside, that orchid is going to start to respond because of the warmer temperatures. Nobelies are fine. And Zygos, are not exactly a resting type either. I don't think that he was trying to imply that his are resting, but if anybody were to read that comment, as I go, being more on the cool side, more favorable, this is their time to shine. This is when they would probably start new growths, new roots, and also possibly spike. And I'm hoping that I would be able to do that to have some blooms by January. You can do weekly all year with fertilizing, but it will definitely depend on your orchids. Which orchids are you talking about? I wouldn't do it across the board unless your orchid is in active growth or in bloom. Now, I know that there's also the discussion about we should stop fertilizing orchids once we see them in bloom. Stop fertilizing. That is such a radical general statement. I don't agree with that, because some of our orchids that we have are bred to be floriferous, to be vigorous, which means their turnaround cycle from blooming to starting new growths and new roots is pretty immediate. So I wouldn't stop fertilizing. However, if you're going with a species, and I'm going to go back to my Laelia perenniae because she's my classic species example of somebody that literally sits on a shelf for 4 to 5 months of the year, and my eyes can't detect that this orchid is doing anything. There is no way I'm putting any fertilizer in that pot. So weekly is okay depending on which orchid you're talking about, Desiree. I wouldn't make it a general rule. It's not safe to fertilize an orchid that is not in bloom, not pushing a spike, not growing any roots, and not growing a new leaf or a new growth. That is when just plain water is absolutely fine. And I love it when an orchid actually gives me the opportunity to just flush. Oh, give me because flushing is so important. Hey, Trika, good evening. Good to see you. Flushing is so important. And when we have an orchid in active growth, it's almost like I need to fertilize, I need to supplement. When am I going to flush? Because right now, it is wonderful to see an orchid just stop blooming, stop doing anything for a moment, because now I can just flush the pot at liberty and don't feel bad about not fertilizing. So make sure you're looking for 3 signs if you're going to do the weekly thing, and stop if you don't have any new leaves or any new growths, any new roots growing, or any bloom spikes developing, or the orchid is in bloom. That is my recommendation on that one. And you'll save yourself some product and probably some roots in the pot as well. So let me know if that answers the question. If it was too confusing, maybe talking in circles, just let me know, okay? Keep asking, Desiree. I am so glad to see you. And let me know if you got a notification, because people have been telling me, I wish I got the notification. So I'm hoping that things are going to maybe slide into place, that people are getting their notifications. I'm glad it came on time for Amina. That was perfect. And here's FFF. If anybody doesn't know and has been reading comments, why am I addressing Fernanda as FFF? That's the short version of a fabulous friend, Fernanda. And Fernanda coming and telling me that everything in her family and the history of her life starts with F. So I thought, well, why don't I make a continuation on that? Here you go, FFF, fabulous friend, Fernanda. So we've got temperature drops. Yeah, Fernanda is yonder over the border. She is my closest and favorite neighbor. That has to do with orchids. And her temperatures are usually, I don't know, Fernanda, correct me if I'm wrong, 5 degrees less than mine, round about there. So what happens at my end usually is like the signal to then what should happen at her end. Because like, Hibiki, thank you guys thank you so much for that feedback. I'm so glad you got the notification. I'm so glad. So Hibiki in my case will bloom much earlier, and mine is already fading. And Fernanda's then knows, oh well, hers is probably another 2 months away from blooming. So, you know, she can see what's happening in the patio and pretty much guesstimate what's going to happen at her end as well. So, and that's the same with the, it's going to happen with the Ancelia africana. Okay, I think that YouTube has stopped sending out email notifications. I'm not entirely sure. People weren't using that feature that much. I do believe that YouTube has cut that out. Not sure, don't quote me on it, but somewhere down the line I read something about them saying that's just not being taken advantage of, so they're not going to use it anymore. So yeah, I'm hoping that Ancelia africana will show some similarities next year, because we're watching and trying to compare notes as who is doing what at what time. So, but there's not really been any questions because Fernanda knows exactly how her orchids operate, and her bleteas are growing new shoots. And well, we've just heard in the chat tonight that hers are already sprouting up, happily growing. Those loose leaves when they cannot cope with the cold. Yeah. We shall see. We shall see. We'll definitely keep an eye on that. So you received an email on the previous lives and not now. Okay. The mailman. He's late. Sorry. I don't know. I don't know what to say. That's surprising me, because I thought like a year ago or something that YouTube said something about no more email notifications, but never mind. At least you're here, so thank you so much. Okay, so Andrea Alum, everything fine. There was another one. Okay, can make wonders in my garden. Lizzie Thomas. Lizzie Thomas is from India. Actually, there's Joseph Joseph. So these two, Lizzie Thomas, they are both in India, but it's actually Jose Joseph. Jose Joseph is a fabulous friend as well. He is in India, in Kerala, and he is creating an orchid garden. I don't know about his timing, his schedule, whatever, but I would love to have Jose on the panel one day. I don't want to push anybody. I don't, but what he has been describing in the comments, he is making a film curtain as well. Yes, that'll be a film curtain numero 2. That's fabulous over there in India. And he's been mounting and doing some very creative things. I would love to see that one day. So, Jose, I'm not calling you out. No pressure, amigo. But if you ever have time, let me know when it suits you. I will fire up a live just for you and anybody else that has time. I feel that the world needs to see what you're doing, in my opinion. You have got the email and the phone notification. Okay, great. Ignore me. Ignore what I just said about YouTube. The best dendrobium, the best starter dendrobium, that is a very good question. And that would depend on, I would say, 2 factors. How warm is your grow space? And is it consistently warm all year round? And how much space have you got? If I can give you, let's say, a recommendation for an orchid, even though the spike might get very long, can you accommodate that? Now, you may see that I don't grow Dendrobium phalaenopsis in my collection. I used to have them. Let me write this into the chat. Sorry, that is phalaenopsis, S-I-S at the end. You may see that in my collection, I don't have Dendrobium phalaenopsis, but I love them. Now, I find them relatively easy to grow, but they are warm growers, continuous growers. They don't need a winter rest. They just grow. They grow beautiful canes, and they produce a long spike. Let me see if I can find some, and I hope I won't be dinged by YouTube for any copyright reasons. Dendrobium, because this whole thing is a bit dodgy. when it comes to, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to be kicked out of the live stream. So take that Dendrobium phalaenopsis and Google that. The only thing is, Desiree, they don't like the cold one bit. And that is why I don't have them in my collection. They don't want to go below 20 degrees Celsius. All right, indoors. Indoors. Let me know your indoor temperatures. But not much though. not that much in my opinion. I don't know, the Fernanda. Every time mine got dropped, the temperatures dropped. It's like I set them back, and eventually they didn't recover. But Fernando knows about them. The thing is that they are warm growers. They don't like to get cold, wet feet. The roots need to be nice and toasty, nice and warm. Otherwise, there's a problem. So that I find is a super easy one. And the other easy one is a Dendrobium baryota, or in the United States, it's Dendrobium Jonathan's Glory. Let me type that in. This one is easier because it isn't fussy about temperatures. If it gets cold, that's great. It loves it. Let me do this, Jonathan Glory. Beautiful, vigorous, loves to have a drop in temperature, can live outdoors until about 5 degrees. That's where I'm going to say is the cutoff, because I haven't got much experience. After that, mine tolerates 5 degrees Celsius, and on top of that, fragrant. Absolutely gorgeous. Very simple, very easy to grow. And another really fun one that is also easy to grow. I'm finding that people are having difficulty finding this one, which surprises me because it's so vigorous, and why should it be that difficult, is Dendrobium hibiki, the one that always features for months and months and months in my blooms for you. I don't understand. That one should not be hard to find. It is vigorous, and it's not one of those that takes for years and years to propagate. That is perfect for a Dendrobium phalaenopsis. Absolutely perfect. And in the summer months, you can put that Dendrobium phalaenopsis outside in bright shade, not direct sun. It's gonna love it. The hotter it gets for that one, it's just gonna love it. The reason it's not working in my grow space is because my grow space drops to 14 degrees Celsius. And even while I was heating and maintaining my grow space at 20 degrees Celsius, it was because of my setup of leca and self-watering, and the leca has evaporative cooling, which cooled the roots down. Didn't like that one bit. So there were a few factors why it didn't work for me, and my circumstances aren't changing. That's why I didn't buy any replacements. But that is a perfect temperature. If you're growing complex phalaenopsis hybrids, then you've got yourself great climate for a Dendrobium phalaenopsis as well. And they're beautiful. And they shouldn't be that expensive either. And I love the way they grow. They're so generous on the root front. When you see a new growth coming, and then all of a sudden it's like fireworks of green root tips coming out of the base. Oh, it's just a sight to behold. Absolutely love it. So let me just make sure. Okay, Blaze. This was a very long comment. Okay, Dendrobium hibiki has been in bloom for, yes, that's it, Michelle. That's it. Hibiki, 4 months is easy. Not fragrant, but 4 months. It's small, it's compact. And let's get back to the pest situation. The only pest that I've seen on my hibiki ever were some mealybugs. But again, they're easily taken care of. All right, Blaze Aroni. I'm going to touch on this subject right here. Here we go. Da-di-da-di-da. Dendrobium nobile that always has some sort of pest. Okay, this is not to put you off, Desiree, but I didn't determine with her what pests that she had specifically. But again, if it's a mealybug, don't worry about it. Just be ready ready on hand to just, eradicate the mealybugs, garlic alcohol, and you won't see them for months. So she got her as a few years ago as a seedling, too young to bloom, second year, trying to care for this orchid, overwhelming. I never feel on top of the problems. Yellow spots on some leaves. Right. It doesn't matter, in my opinion, it doesn't matter what's the best time of year to buy a good and healthy dendrobium. Any time of year, okay, let me just make this, okay. Best is spring, summer, and fall, early fall, while it's still warm enough. Because if you're getting your orchid in via shipping, you do not want any orchid to get too cold during the shipment. Now, people put in heat packs and everything like that, but at this day and age, you never know. The shipping, in my opinion, has gotten so bad. The risk of delays is extremely high, and a heat pack is only going to last a couple of days, depending on how cold it can get outside. But if you're buying locally and you're at your grocery store and you see one that you like and you want to take it home, you can buy it at any time of year at your garden center as well. Just make sure, if it is cold outside, that you have a sweater ready for it. And I'm not kidding, a towel, a blanket, a sweater, something, carrying it out, even the 2-3 minutes from the door of the store to your car, which has cooled down by now. By the time you get home, I would make sure, if you're thinking of getting something orchid-wise this time of year, buying it locally, take something with you where you can wrap your orchid in before you carry it out of your store. Yes, people will look at you, but you can, you will be having the last laugh. If they're doing the same thing, their orchid is going to have a real issue. Yeah, a lot of rot issues, and you don't see the rot. Sometimes you won't even see the rot when you take the orchid out. It happens within 2 or 3 days afterwards. Leaves go yellow and poof. And sometimes the heat packs themselves, because they do such a great job when it comes to insulating the boxes, the heat packs themselves start to create condensation within the whole environment that they're boxed up in. And that is going to cause a problem. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, I was about to answer your question, Desiree, by saying anytime, and then I had to stop myself because, anytime if you can buy from the grocery or wherever you're locally shopping, but make sure you wrap that orchid up. Oh, Michelle, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I know that feeling. And I bought at the time, I've made a massive order and I bought it and the box was not packed properly and I had a lot of damage within that box. And that's not even a mistake. That's just carelessness from the seller during the right time of year. So I know exactly what you're saying. Look, I'm sorry that happened. Oh, what a shame. Just get yourself a blanket, something nice, something that you find cozy and warm, because you know what they say, if your Dendrobium phalaenopsis or if your phalaenopsis orchid is happy with your temperature, no, dyslexia kicking in. If you're comfortable in your home, your Den phalaenopsis will be comfortable as well as your phalaenopsis hybrid, that way. If you're too cold, they will be too cold. So that's the margin. Take a blanket when you bring your orchid home. But what I wanted to point out about these leaves right here, and hence ergo my novel as a reply, this comment I thought was super interesting because she's getting yellow spots on some of the leaves. Dendrobiums, and I'm trying to find the right research paper where I can figure out why and make that explainable. I must be asking the wrong question to Google because I'm not getting any answers. But Dendrobiums are notorious for having issues with any kind of commercial pesticide and insecticide. They will object to that so quickly that the orchid itself might be fine. You see a pest and you go for it with, let's say, whatever insecticide you bought at the store that says, against scale XYZ, and boom, it looks like maybe you've sunburnt your leaves, or as in the case of Blaze, she's got yellow spots on some leaves. there is no sign of the pest anymore. The spots will appear where the pests weren't even there. So it's not like mechanical damage or pest damage that you can see. Dendrobiums hate any kind of insecticide, and I call them industrial. I'm synthetic. That's the word. And that is why I was so happy to come across this garlic alcohol recipe from Adrian from Orchid Maniaco, and he's over in Ecuador. And I took his video and pretty much translated it and shared it on my channel, that this recipe is because I had the Krista Erdmann arrive, and she was a gift, the Dendrobium Krista Erdmann from Luque, and I thought, well, you know, you don't complain on a free orchid in a shipment, it's very rare. But as I did with many of my orchids back in the day, I blasted them with insecticide because then, Desiree, I understand you don't want to introduce pests into your home. And it was at a time of year where I couldn't necessarily isolate this orchid and keep an eye on her. I only have so much space where there's adequate light. The rest of the space is occupied by Ciliano when he has free flight, and anything green, never mind having an orchid with pests, there will be no orchid. So I treated her just with the insecticidal soap that I'm treating others with, and all of a sudden it looked like the leaves had sunburn, and she wasn't anywhere near any sun. And she dropped the leaves, and it was the new growth that she came with. Dendrobiums just don't like the synthetics. So the garlic alcohol has served me really, really well. And that is what I said to Blaze, that she needs to see if maybe she's using an insecticide, because earlier in the comment she's talking about pests. Maybe her insecticide is causing these issues, because if there's nothing else wrong with the orchid, then I would back off anything synthetic for dendrobiums when it comes to treating pests. Ingrid Fussell is always so sweet, always comes in with a sweet comment. Okay, so we discussed briefly what other nobiles or what other dendrobiums need a winter rest besides the nobiles. There's many, many species. I only have a few, but even, for example, my Dendrobium Victoria Regina, she doesn't need a winter rest in my climate, even though everybody says she's more of a cool grower and would absolutely hate being in my summer during the hot temperatures. No, I was so happy because I was taking a huge gamble getting a Victoria Regina, knowing that for the majority of the year, it would be nice that my temperatures are not, favorable for this orchid. So there are certain orchids that you would think, well, when it gets cold, they should rest. No, that is when they pick up. And that is the example of a Victoria Regina. My Tortilla needs a rest, sort of. I give her a rest because the low temperatures slow her down. If she were a true, proper resting, she would be dropping leaves left, right, and center. The nobile types, yes, they do need a rest, but we're talking about complex hybrids, so we can be a little bit more flexible with what we consider rest and what we consider dormancy. A rest is when you've got the leaves on the orchid. Dormancy is when the leaves have dropped. That's the simple comparison I can make between the two. So if you have an orchid and you're not entirely sure whether it is a resting or a dormant orchid, then the leaves will tell you the next step, so to speak. So she was talking about, the nobile types, and then about new growth starting during the time period of when this orchid, according to our temperatures, would force an orchid to go to a rest or go dormant. And lo and behold, new growth spring up. And then there was Paige, I think a little bit lower, she said the same thing. I've got a thriving nobile and is also growing 6 new growths, and that is this time of year. So if you have a case like that, and basically the two cases are separate from each other, and there's 2 different bits of advice, but both have a similar question. When it comes to Blaze, if you have the case of Blaze, for example, let's go back up, or was it Trish? Anyway, if you have the case of one of these ladies where you have a new nobile type and you only have 1 or 2 large canes and it is growing a new growth out of season, do not put that orchid into rest phase. I know you would like to have blooms, and that is why we grow some of our orchids, is also to enjoy the blooms. But if you put that orchid into a rest phase with only 2 mature structures, you will be forfeiting the opportunity to get a stronger orchid, and it will bloom eventually anyway, maybe not as showy as if you were to give it a rest, but it will bloom. However, if you put that orchid now into a dormant situation, that little growth is going to stay stunted. It will still produce roots, but it's not going to act as a very active storage organ for the increased strength of the orchid. And that is the case when you get an orchid new, how they propagate them out of the nursery, and they have maybe one large cane, well, one medium-sized cane. The large cane is the blooms, that's why you bought it, and then it's supposed to go rest. Now it's growing a new growth. Push your new nobly, push those canes to the max as best as possible, and just think long term as opposed to, oh, the books say my orchid needs to go dormant. No, yes, the books say that. You want a strong orchid. So make sure that you push towards growth in that instance. Now, the instance of Paige, she's got 6 new growths this time of year on a nobly. And that is where I'd say it's wackadoo. Okay, right. In this case as well. Now, she's got 2 options here. Because she's got a really vigorous orchid, this is where I would say it's up to you what you want to do. But clearly the orchid is telling us something, and now we can stop and put the orchid into its resting phase by reducing everything that we know what an orchid needs to go into rest mode. And then we'll have 6 somewhat stunted growths. And then I'm thinking, like, why would you want to do that in this case as well? Because by the time the 6 new growths mature, according to what I can discern from this orchid's growth pattern, it's going to bloom crazy anyway. It's clearly doing really well. There is no reason to put 6 new growths into dormancy. But that would also be not the case if this were a species. All right, so the species have a very, very distinct pattern of resting and dormancy and active growth and blooming. The complex hybrids, the primary hybrids, they start to muddy the water a little bit, and then it is up to you or up to us to decide what we want from our orchids. And if an orchid grows 1 new growth and has 2 itty-bitty canes, my goodness, grow that growth on. If an orchid is thriving and has 6 new growths, why would you want to stop that? I personally, and that's what I recommended, I personally was told her, push those. You can't ignore 6 new growths. It doesn't matter. Would you say growing dendrobium is better hanging up or in pots? Yeah. How much space have you got? And I would say, how big is the orchid? Both kind of go hand in hand. And another question, can you keep up with the watering? Because if you put an orchid up and it is on a mount, which is the perfect way for me to present any dendrobium, especially if they're pendant like the aphyllum, that orchid in a pot would just not look right, in my opinion. But know that it needs a lot of water. I mean, a lot of it. So, and it gets very, very big. So that would be the question I would ask you, Desiree, to assess how much space have you got, because you can see on my aphyllum, well, if I could pull up a picture right now, let me see if I should, if I could, if I would. I don't want to play it. Nope, that would be a mistake. So my aphyllum is a pouring down kind of canes. It looks like a Medusa now. When it arrived, I would have to show you and ask you to, can you see that, those 3 canes? Can you see? It was tiny. And that is why I put 3 dendrobiums on that huge mount. And it looked really silly even then. But now I've got this monster consuming the mount, and it's been 4 years. So know what you're up against when you're buying a dendrobium about its size. If you have any doubts, always feel free to email me, because if you know the size of your orchid, you can make a better judgment where you can put it and how much water it's going to need. Now, in the winter, it's fine, it's resting, you would just need to mist it if you're bringing your orchids indoors. In the summer, ask yourself if you have the time. While I was still working, I was somewhat panicked about my vandas. Well, not really the vandas, but I had a big tub. They would soak for the first 4 hours of my work in the tub, and I would take them out for the rest of the day. But all my dendrobiums were still on mounts. My tortilla was on a mount, my aphyllum, and I would drown them in the morning. 4 hours later, I would just jump over, go home as fast as possible, if that was possible, run around the patio and drown them again with the misting, and then at lunchtime again, and then I left them for the rest of the day. So you need to, because when they're in active growth, it's insane. You really need to be able to be on top of it. And the little ones, like a hibiki or something like that, they present themselves more beautifully in a pot. Even the Dendrobium phalaenopsis with its upright growing habit. So if you see a dendrobium that grows upright, a pot is nice. If you see a dendrobium that's growing upright in a pot and it is all staked and I don't know what, know that that is probably going to be quite a large pendant dendrobium, and it's only staked in a pot because it's small. So the little not the miniature, but the medium-sized dendrobiums, upright growers, I would say pots are better. I hope that answers the question. Not even in a roundabout way, because that's not what these lives are about. And I'm not trying to be short and sweet here, but you can interrupt me at any time, you know that. All right. Okay, here we have the same thing as well. Has started to lose leaves, not many, 1 or 2. She's growing a new growth. And then here's the same question I asked as well. What size is your dendrobium? Based on that, that is what you would do. So do oncidiums go dormant? I found this also a very interesting question because, dormancy signs and cares, and I didn't even put an oncidium in there as an example because I don't have a specific oncidium in my collection. You're welcome, Desiree. I'm glad. Thank you. In my collection that actually goes dormant. But I did an oncidium care guide video where I put care cards on. And when it comes to dormancy with oncidiums, I would be very, very careful to use that word, because that word somehow triggers in our minds, stop water, stop fertilizing. And it is so wrong. So I'm very cautious. I know that sometimes people might say, well, that's semantics, but no, it's not. You have to be, when we say dormant, we have to understand that, like I said, if a pseudobulb shrivels, that means the orchid isn't dormant. It's hungry. The minute we put water in and the pseudobulb plumps up again, well, the roots they need something. So oncidiums, when it comes to temperature, some oncidium species need to have a resting phase with less water. I don't want to sound presumptuous with the way I'm emphasizing my words right now, but I want to be very, very careful to be able to make the difference that an oncidium growing in 10 degrees, 57 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 degrees Celsius in a wet, dry cycle habitat, it still needs to have water, because where these kinds of orchids grow, they are in high altitudes and they are in clouds, and clouds carry a lot of water, and those roots are sucking up that water. And some giant oncidiums live in that environment and they need that water, even though when we say watering, we correlate that with getting a jug and pouring water into a pot. We've watered our orchid. Whereas we don't sort of assimilate, unless you have a mister that goes off every 30 minutes for 10 minutes, we don't remember in our mind frame the fog, the cloud. The dew point is super important when it comes to oncidiums, especially species. So these cold growing oncidiums, yes, they have a resting phase where they get a lot more light, let's say, because trees lose their foliage, but the roots are constantly absorbing moisture. Now, try to replicate that in a pot, and if you're saying they're constantly saturated with the moisture from the clouds, from the fog, etc., then people will think, well, I've got to keep my roots wet. No, because now we have to add the airflow. So that oncidium up there in the clouds, there's a lot of airflow. The balance is fantastic because they get all the water thrown at them, and yet the roots are never really soaking wet. And on top of that, with all the water thrown at them through the clouds, they are actually absorbing nutrients. So we can't really replicate that for these specialized kinds of oncidiums. What we can do to the best of our ability, like I said in this video, is I am the fog. And in order to not make a mistake, I don't fertilize. Fertilizing at the wrong time is going to create salts around the roots, and salts around the roots is going to cause roots to die. So I am the fog. I am not the tree branch that has nutrients dripping onto the roots. I'm just, for 3 to 4 months, the orchids are going to be fine, even longer, as long as I keep my roots happy and none of my structures desiccate. So I don't know, Chuck, if you ever see this video, then let me know what you think, and let me know if my comment was of any help, if my reply was of any use. Your temperature will determine for your oncidium how you need to take care of it, watering wise, during the colder months of the year. If you see an oncidium, for example, in this video, my care cards where I have the little screenshot things going, and you see the temperatures are 22 to 30 or 22 to 40, whatever, high, warm. That is not an orchid that goes dormant. That is a continuous grower, and you want to keep it growing, so that doesn't apply. The moment you see an orchid that has a certain temperature drop compared to the warm temperature, that's when you need to think, oh, hang on, hello, is this a resting orchid? Is this a dormant orchid? Especially when it comes to oncidiums and, in some cases, cattleyas, and, for example, not to confuse anybody, when you see that there are warm temperatures at the upper level where people say, but not beyond, that means that that is a stress factor for the orchid. It doesn't mean that she can go higher, it'll be fine. No, because some orchids go dormant, they rest during the hottest months of the year. So we need to also take that into consideration. Okay, in my case, for example, it's my Rhincholalia digbyana. Now, she is not dormant, but she certainly does absolutely nothing, frustratingly so, from the months of April through to July. Last year, even end of August, she did nothing. Well, in inverted commas, nothing. She was busy with her hormones. I didn't see that though. And this orchid is a warm to hot grower. So why is she not doing something during my hot summer? Grow, girl, grow, right? Well, no. This year, she's doing it for the first time. I've never seen two growths come so early. But this year, my summer has been super mild. So keep in mind, when we're talking about dormant orchids, it's not just about winter rest. They will rest during the hottest months of the year. They will slow down because they're reserving energy. The conditions aren't ideal. They need to conserve their energy to survive, and when the conditions improve, the temperatures become more agreeable, be it spring or be it fall, there's both sides of the spectrum. That is when they'll start to pick up and start to grow again. Fantastic. I hope I haven't lost you. I don't even know if I've still got somebody in this live stream. But if I have lost you, then I appreciate that you were here. But you see, we can't just talk about cold weather. My colder orchids, like the Victoria Regina, she is now starting to pick up. There's a different speed, a different oomph in her leaf growth. And I think she's also very happy that she doesn't have any more spider mites. Okay, Fernanda, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So yeah, dormancy and resting can happen during the summer months or the winter months. Basically, in the care of an orchid, whenever the conditions turn out to be unfavorable, the orchid will go into rest. Thank you, Desiree. I appreciate that. And it has nothing to do with either winter, the fact that it's winter in most cases, of course, but you know, it can happen in the summer. So you're not making a mistake when you're saying, for example, when somebody asked me once, my orchid, da-di-da-di-da, she's bloomed, and she is, did I do something wrong? She's not doing anything now. So, you know, first I need to know which orchid are we talking about, you know, and then if the person does, if it's not a species, I go and look and find the parents, and then I can answer the question properly. And most of the time, except for the Prostechias, you know, there's some exceptions, but most of the time after an orchid is done blooming, that's it. That's it for a little bit, and then eventually they come around with their next cycle. All right, so my Nobly has any signs? Yeah, I know, I wish, like I said in this video, I want to be a hedgehog, please. I want to be a hedgehog in my next life. Right, so one thing I wanted to say about people that grow indoors, and I've had this question, I don't remember if it was in this comment section, but one thing I wanted to say about growing indoors is that, oh, here you see all the points of the things I'm asking, because, you know, some questions need, is it a species? Would it be a mature plant? If it's a hybrid, is it a juvenile? Is it a seedling? How long have you had it? When did you buy it? Oh, all these questions are important, but yeah, when you are growing in an indoor environment, for example, I don't want to lose track of the fact that I'm inside, outside, inside. That's not fair. A controlled environment has its benefits, but when it comes to orchids that need a dormant rest, so to speak, to trigger the hormones, which will then produce the blooms, they also need to have a little bit of a drop in, let me say little bit in inverted commas, of a drop in temperature in order for the hormones to trigger what they're supposed to do next, which is our blooms. Now, it's easy for me. The ones I have outside, it's going to get cold. That's my chill. I'm done. Indoors, it's a little bit more difficult because on top of the fact you can't just put this orchid somewhere where it's in a cold room. No, it needs light. A lot of it. A lot more than it would need during the summer because we don't want to burn any leaves. But, you know, if you've got it under artificial lights, and it's not blooming properly for you, then there's two things that could be happening. It is not getting enough temperature drop. The variable is too minimal. And secondly, it's not getting enough light. Whether you've got it under artificial lights or not, it may be that for that orchid, because it's been under those artificial lights steady throughout the entire growing season, where is the light differential come the winter when the canopies of the trees have lost their leaves and the light levels increase above what it had during the growing season? If you cannot provide increased light, the nobile will bloom, or let's say the orchid will bloom, but it won't bloom as abundantly. Now, some dendrobiums are extremely forgiving, which is awesome, because on nodes that haven't bloomed, they will eventually bloom. So we'll get our blooms, but we won't get this boom in your face, beautiful display. So we need to also be mindful of, when we're indoor growing, about getting our orchids to bloom, bringing them through a rest, giving them a chill down. Desiree, I love you. You're so sweet. We have to give them a cool down, but we have to increase the light. It is not good enough to take the orchid and put her in the front hallway or wherever it is where there is no freezing, but it's much cooler than in the house or the grow space. Put her there and expect that the chill will take care of the rest. If that spot does not have enough bright light, then it will not induce or bring any blooms at all. The orchid will go dormant, but the spring it's going to be like, oh, it's going to be a really little sad show. And again, you think that the orchid is not doing well or you've done something wrong, whereas the only wrong thing, there was no increase in light. I grow mostly indoors and a few outdoors. My winter rest orchids are outside in the cold and getting outdoor light. Yay! High five. high five, Anita Brown. Coming in with the deeds. Totally. That's it. That's pretty much it. Now, we are lucky that we have the opportunity to put them outside and getting the outdoor light. When we are growing indoors, we are giving our orchids consistent light under those artificial lights during the growing season, and then we wonder why she is not blooming. That is because if you give that orchid that consistent light under the growing lights, it needs an increase in light during the winter, and you're not giving that because it's the consistent light from the summer. Yeah, so we really need to factor that in. Some people, I've recommended it with some people, especially with Paige. I think her first year, I said, put that orchid into the brightest location. Some in the United States, some garages have windows, and they're also cold. They never go to, well, never. No, sorry, I take that back. Usually they don't drop to freezing temperatures. So I said, put that orchid in your garage and at the window, whatever you can throw at it light-wise. If you need to put an artificial light on it and on top of that, then do it. You can't go wrong. And well, the next couple of months, she sent me an email and I almost fell off my chair, all caps. The all caps were overwhelming. It was amazing. Absolutely loved that email. It was all like, wow! You know, I think if she could have jumped out of my screen, we would have had a great time. It worked. So yeah, make sure about your light levels. Hey, Robert. Hey, my wingman. How are you? How are you? I grow some indoor at a huge window. Yeah, Desiree. That huge window. Sweet dreams, man. Sweet dreams are made of those. That's, yeah, it's quite spectacular. I wonder, do you have any ladders like they have in the library? Because, can you imagine? Can you imagine an orchid wall where, like, you've got a huge window? Lawn darts. Okay. Happy Thanksgiving, Robert, to you, your family. I hope everything tasted nice, delicious. Don't forget, in some cultures, that burping is a thing. It is a compliment to the host. Michelle has a ladder hanging from her ceiling. You see, I'm not that nuts. Because I am just looking at the old-fashioned libraries with the ladder that you can scooch around, and I'm removing in my mind all the background. I'm putting glass onto that background. I'm leaving the shelves, but staggering them. You can see where I'm going. But that ladder stays. Oh my. Oh. The birds are still. Oh, you've got 3. Okay. Oh, not a good day for turkeys in your neighborhood. I say that with a smile, clenched teeth. Run, turkey. Well, it's too late for that. Oh, of course it is still cooking. Yeah. We're not quite there yet. But yeah, that would be, if somebody were to say, will you move in with me? I'm going to say, this is my project. This is what I want. Can you make that happen? And I'll give them not even 10 seconds. Because even if after 10 seconds I haven't had the yes, it's done. No, I'm not moving in with you. Why would I? That would be amazing. Oh, that's awesome. I haven't done TikTok. I'm so far behind with all the social medias. So far behind. Okay. Okay. You're busy. I'm so glad you dropped by, Robert. Thank you so much. Please do not feel obliged. Please don't. Please don't. We're pretty much just going through the comments of the dormancy video, and I like to talk orchids, so what can I say? Please do not let this interrupt any of your festivities and visiting with family. And make sure that those birds, well, oh, that's fun. That sounds like a lot of fun. That's awesome. Michelle, if you want, I don't know if you have time, but would you email me that? That video, I would love to see it. At least we know well, you can pretty much picture what I would like to do or have. Use a ladder, not a big one. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, Anita. All spiking, den fowls hanging out. Oh my goodness. Oh, I tell you. Oh, thank you, Michelle. That would be awesome. Yeah, that's my thing. That would be my jam. Coffee machine, big window, library styly, but I mean huge. I'm not just talking up, I mean wide. I need that ladder to do at least a semicircle. Because, some would like to have a little bit of shade. So I need to cover at least the southeast, full south, and southwest. So that would just about cover it. And no, I don't want a skinny little thing where when you turn around, you're bumping a root to it's got to be statement piece. Yeah, wonderful. That's sort of the thing when Desiree mentioned something, my head just went, ooh, that's where I want to be going. Okay, so is anybody interested in coming up, talking about things? Because, like I said, this is interactive and we are interacting, but, eventually I'd like to have the voices, and eventually that would be maybe in the near future. Let's see. If nobody wants to come up, I'm going to wish you a very happy Thanksgiving to those that celebrated. And I want to say thank you to all of you for showing up. I so appreciate having you here. And I am sorry for the glitch at the beginning. I'm going to try and figure out why my sound was off. Unless we give it another go. And anybody that would like to leave at this point in time, I thank you so, so much for being here. But I do, Thank you, Michelle. Oh, wait. Do you think I can share it? Do you think I can share that video? Let me know. I'm just waiting for your reply. That's the dead air. Okay. It's downloading, but I'm seeing the words my dining room. Oh. Michael, if you're still here, thank you so much. Oh, thank you on behalf of the Orchids. I so appreciate it. Thank you. Wow. Christmas came early for the Orchids. Yay. Thank you so, so much. How sweet. Okay, we're going to save this. Give me a few seconds, peoples, while I... so pretty. Well, I've got to save this, and then I got to make sure... Even that... There's a Vanda in bloom. I've got Vanda Envy already. Michael, thank you so much. I'm sorry, I do not have any windows open on my desk other than what I need, because I don't want the stream to go get weak. Come on, wakey, wakey. All right. We have a minute video from Michelle Carini's window, and she's got the bladder. Cool. Right, let's get me out of the way, and let's share this. There we go. Yes, now we're talking orchids. Ooh. Oh my word. That is so cool, Michelle. That is so cool. Yes. I love that rustic feel of that ladder up there. It just brings everything together. It just, you've got that beautiful cabinet on the bottom, and then you have, it just doesn't get lost. And you've got the way you've got your lights fixed up there. That is so amazing. I'm gonna just play this again. Oh, that is amazing. I love how the light comes in, but also how you have used the ladder to complement the wood underneath. Huh. Fantastic. Oh, inspired. I just need some water. That is awesome. Ooh, what is that huge? Those two huge, that's a huge Cattleya on the left? No. What is that? No, that looks like a Stanhopeia maybe? It's gorgeous. Absolutely love this. Oh, wow. Wow, Michelle, thank you so much for sharing, for sending this over. That's awesome. I so appreciate that. It's so much better to see. That is just one beautiful, beautiful window. I see there's still a little bit of space left. Okay, 3 Cattleyas. Those are some serious Cattleyas you've got there. Wow. So if you, so you're on TikTok. Are you on TikTok with your same name, Michelle? Because you can put your TikTok down in the chat if you want to. I don't have TikTok. I'm sorry. I can hardly even keep up with what I should be doing with Instagram. It's beautiful. Absolutely love it. Okay, well, if anybody does TikTok, there you have Michelle's TikTok handle, Orchids with a side of plants. That is cute. That is so cute. Well, people tell me that I need to get onto TikTok because that's where you get more exposure. And I'm like, I can't even do Instagram. Instagram with the same name. Okay. I love that. That is an awesome, awesome TikTok handle, Michelle. And thank you so much. Yeah, let me just see what happens this time around. I want to know why my intro didn't have any sound. And if not, if this doesn't work, I'm just going to do it once because I can hear it at my end. I'm just going to do it once. If it doesn't work, I'll figure it out for next time. I don't know why. The sound is low and distorted because you were hearing it through my headphones that was getting picked up by the mic. I don't know why. I'm gonna have to figure this out, you guys. I'm so sorry. My source is fine. The toggle is on. Everything is the way it should be. And you can see the volume is up right here. Trisha! Hey! Trisha's son, how are you? Welcome, it's so good to have you. Happy Thanksgiving if you're celebrating. I got to make sure I remember that because we dum-dums here in this European place, we don't do Thanksgiving. But it is so nice to see you. Thank you so much. Look at you with your little orchid ninja there. There you go. And you're in green. Hey. Thank you, Desiree. I appreciate it. I don't understand why it's not coming through. I've got all the settings up. All of them. I could try one more thing. I could. I just don't want to waste people's time because I've uploaded this to YouTube. It's just not a public video, that is all. That's it. It's a private video because this is not, for the time being, anything I want to do. But let's just see. My goodness, Trisha, it's so good to see you. Hope you're having a great day because at this moment, right now, I can't actually see you because I'm doing something else in the chat. The chat is on a different window, so let me pull you down and get you here. You don't as well, but you're all good. I'm glad to hear that. That's awesome. All right, so what we're going to do, well, it's so nice to see you, Trisha. You're my first orchid ninja on the night like this. It's fantastic. I had Julie's orchids the other night. And that was quite late, but oh, it's so good to see that little icon. Thank you so much for being here. Right, we have another opportunity. I'll be using the YouTube side, just for those that haven't seen it on Instagram. We did it. Okay, that's, you see, I didn't reduce the volume or anything there. I didn't, yeah, because normally I toggle the volume. It was on full. I hope it didn't blow your ears out. That was not my intention at all. But I wanted, if I was to toggle the volume, then I would probably go bonkers if somebody said I can't hear it, because I would have been at a complete loss after that. But yes, I thought it would be nice to have a proper little intro. It went a little bit lead balloon style-y. Unfortunately, I see that you went to my Instagram. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I had a lot of fun doing it, and a little bit of a tear in my eye when the crescendo hits and it's only the maxima in black space. Anyway, it gets me every time, that single bloom out in the darkness. Okay. Instagram is Ninja Orchids. If I just, well, so I am on Instagram, and you can clearly tell that where do I get my link from? There we are. Duh. Yeah, it's been a while. And I'm very happy that at least now I have a desktop option that I can work with Instagram on desktop, because seriously, all this little typey thing, yeah, it's not good. Not good for my eyes. Anywho, Trisha, I will be going live your time more conveniently. I just shared the link. Is there a cross communication issue, Desiree? Know that my account is private, but I accept everyone except for certain people I'm filtering out. All right, please do not see, when you see that it is locked, you have to ask and make a request. I will always accept. So it's just for personal reasons. No, that's fine. It's just for personal reasons. I went on Instagram. I'm an open person. I was all public about it, blah, blah, blah. No blocking, nothing. And yeah, somebody found me and I was like, what? And I immediately put it on. Yeah, I don't want that part of my life for the time being in my life. But anyway, so Trisha, I am going to be live on Saturday night. If you want, Friday night, my time, 12:30 midnight on and up. And I'm hoping to get the time zones included for everybody that's on that gorgeous side of the world. Yes, I would say that is a very beautiful side of the world. And I hope that you also enjoy, maybe if you go back to the beginning of the stream, thank you, Anita. If you go back to the beginning of the stream, there was a species. I will be changing the title of this live. There's a species that we were talking about in Western Australia. You guys have the funkiest orchids ever. Anyway, good. I'm glad, because again, these streams do have today had a 10-11 second lag, which means that what I'm talking about is history, and what you're hearing is history to me, and you haven't heard what I have as yet to say. Okay, that's fine, Desiree. Don't worry. I am not fussy about who comes in. I know what I'm looking for, that who cannot come in. And I know tactics and strategies as well, so it's going to be fine. All right. Well, I'm going to love and leave you. If nobody wants to come up, I want to say thank you to everybody so very, very much for coming. And once again, whoever is out there listening in the ether, celebrating or listening to my white noise while you're preparing the final trimmings for your Thanksgiving, I hope it is fabulous. And I hope and wish that you have yourself a wonderful Thanksgiving. Just make sure, though, one thing, that you stay safe even on a day like this. Okay? Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Oh, I already said that. Stay safe. Next live. Oh, by the way, the next live I'm going to do, I promise, I am going to be doing the Google Earth about me and my hunting grounds in Kenya. We're going to do that on a live, but we're going to do it at a time where I can somehow match everybody, maybe just scraping into Australia, but not losing Europe. We'll try and get that sorted out, but that is on my mind. Tonight was not the night. It's coming, though, I promise. Love you all. Have yourself a beautiful day. Take care. Oh, on one condition, though, please, that you stay safe. Take care. Bye.